in Africa, we have so many knowledge systems,
Sure.
contrary to the Western mindset. So indigenous knowledge systems, these are the various knowledge systems which are based within a certain local community, if you like, but that's not the limitation, because knowledge also travels. So it may be very, very local, but at the same time global as well. However, it's based on on the knowledge of the people. It originates with the people, so it's based in a certain locality. It's defined by a people's, if I may break it down, by the way of being of a people. I call it ontology. How Africans live, for example. And on top of the ontologies, then the cosmology, how they view the world, how they interact with the world. We all interact with the world according to how we view it, our worldview. That's the cosmology. And both the way of being and the worldview then informs how we do things, how we act, how we behave. And these three, behavior, being, worldview, then informs how we know, the processes of knowing. They call it epistemology. And it is out of these four things that then we come up with purpose-based ideas. You may call them systems. So ideally, this is indigenous knowledge systems, and within our context, we focus strictly on African knowledge systems. Actually, we realized that the indigenous knowledge systems is actually the core of any bioeconomy when you look around the world. In our case, we say that indigenous knowledge system is cross-cutting through health, agriculture, or industrial work that we do. How it helps, let's take health for example. If you move around, you'll hear the pharmacologists of this world, the biomedical researchers saying that it takes maybe $4 billion to come up with a single molecule that's a blockbuster drug.
Sure.
And it may take you any time from 10 to 15 years. However, with indigenous knowledge, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go on a wild goose chase. The knowledge is there already. People have been using this knowledge for thousands of years. It has been tried and tested. That's why we're still here today. So what it means that we can actually look at what our challenges are, what are the solutions that people have been using for centuries, then just valorize that with modern science and technology. So the idea is not even to validate indigenous knowledge, it's simply to valorize it using modern technology in order to then better come up with various services, whether it's products or services that can actually serve the people. So this is how we think indigenous knowledge system can actually contribute a great deal within the bioeconomy strategy. A good example that we have within the department is that we came up with what we called it the Indigenous Knowledge Systems Based Bioprospecting and Product Development Platform. But then that started growing. It became a huge a consortium of over 20 organizations from community, government sectors, private sector, research institutions. In there, we have, now we call it the IKS-based Bioinnovation Program. In this program, we've got a number of platforms. One is on traditional medicines, African traditional medicines. I prefer to call them African natural medicines. We have got indigenous knowledge-based cosmeceuticals. These are cosmetics which have health benefits. Nutraceuticals, your functional food, or indigenous foods which have been valorized as well into products like minerals and vitamins, or health infusions and beverages. And then these are then put through the process of research, process of innovation, incubation, technology transfer, up to early commercialization. The best way to then describe how this is benefiting people, I'll use a case in point, is that we have a program on entrepreneurs. We've got, I think it's up to 10 groupings, cooperatives and small and medium enterprises, whereby we did research on their products, put them through training at the South African Bureau of Standards Innovation Hub in terms of business skills. These people now have their own farms, running them as business. They have registered their small companies, and then in a small way, they are starting to commercialize their products, and in the process, then they create actual jobs in their local communities. So with that, the youth don't have to leave a village, for example, and come and struggle in a city where they have to pay for things that in the village they don't even pay. This is a good example. Our premise is that there is no one who can develop anybody. The people themselves must be empowered enough. We must help people in such a way that they develop themselves.
Sure.
So what are the pillars of indigenous knowledge systems, linking it with science and technology? Of course, there must be the knowledge.
Sure.
The knowledge must be there. It must be clear that this knowledge belongs to that family or to that community or to that individual, because it's not always that you find this knowledge belonging to one person. It could be communal, but it can also be an individual who has been innovative. So the knowledge must be there. But also for us to be able to work with communities, we encourage them to organize themselves into legal entities, be it cooperatives or small and medium enterprises or tribal authorities, whatever works for them. We don't impose anything. We just want them to be organized so that then it's easier for them to then work with universities and science councils. There must be infrastructure. And of course, these are the things that government must come in and really help set up, let's say irrigation systems, for example, or pre-processing facilities. We also need good partnerships, especially with the local leaders, traditional leaders. There has to be an observation of some cultural protocols. You can't just barge into a community. All these things are very, very important. Then they lay the foundation for the technical aspects to be done, for the research, for the collaboration in terms of research to take place. But also, you need the policies, the regulations, or those protocols that come from the communities. All these things kind of like give you a structure within which you can actually operate freely. You need the finances. With finances, then, with all these things, then it's easier then to morph into a simple system. These things are not difficult.
Sure.
It's easy. Once you put structures in place, then people perform. I'll give you another example. We train old ladies. These are mothers who have never been to school. We bring them here at the CSIR for them to learn how to do a capsule, to make a capsule of a food supplement, for example.
Sure.
When we came up with this project, people were skeptical. No, these old ladies, they'll break the machines. I said, yes, let them break them. But I just wanted to prove the point that if my father, who never went to school, managed to operate a huge machinery at Sasol, what about my mother, who's actually the custodian of knowledge? Right. These mothers went back home with boxes of their own capsules, nicely packed, and then they could sell in their own communities. Ownership is central to indigenous knowledge because you can't talk about the knowledge without talking about the source of that knowledge. Sure. So in our case, ownership simply means that the original custodians of that knowledge, as I said, whether it's an individual who actually came up with the knowledge or the invention, whatever else, or whether it's a particular family, because there are certain knowledges which belong to certain families or certain clans, or it's general knowledge that we just know that that community as a whole, they're actually the custodian of this knowledge. So there has to be the knowledge, but there has to be the source. And then the source is then the owner of that knowledge. We may improve on this knowledge together with other people, let's say a knowledge holder and a scientist. That's a different story. And this is where then the agreement phase of how work comes in, meaning that a scientist sits with a knowledge holder, then within the scope of the cultural protocols and some of the regulations that we have in the country in terms of intellectual property rights, then start kicking in. We are also aware that the current intellectual property regime does not necessarily favor indigenous knowledge, because it doesn't recognize knowledge that is thousands and thousands of years old. So this is why then our sister unit within the DST has come up with the sui generis regime, which says that we need to build in indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge within the intellectual property frameworks in such a way that it recognizes the original owners of the knowledge. Then that cuts out people who misappropriate, people who steal, biopiracy and all those issues. Then people can benefit directly from their knowledge.